Yeah, I've been like outfitting my I had like a studio, and then COVID forced my brother into here as like an office, so we've been like trying to make it all work. So now I've been
I usually put the blinds down because I had a huge light kit in here, but I sent it back because I was like, we're not doing the show. It takes up half my freaking office. But I should be fine. There's
my light kit is 2 like lamps without the shade on, so I hope it looks
good. That's all right.
Yeah, we're live to YouTube now. Everyone who is going to be tuning into this, we're going to be recording here with Connor Rogers from Bleacher Report, and then we're going to be doing a quick mailbag after that. But yeah, without further ado, let's get rolling with the interview. 3, 2, 1. All right, we now welcome on a very special guest. It is a friend of the show. I think you might be the all-time most recurring guest in the history of the show at this point. And I think the first guest we ever had on here, at least, with my tenure. But it's Connor Rogers from Bleacher Report. How you doing, bud?
I'm good, guys. It's always good to talk to you guys. I joke around all the time on Twitter, especially with the Ravens fans that listen to Stick to Football and follow our work at Bleacher Report, that like since they drafted Lamar, they've kind of been my second team, which is crazy to have another team in the AFC. But, I've been a fan of not only just learning scouting, and they're one of the franchises, kind of how you model to do things. So I really genuinely enjoy talking to you guys about the Ravens.
And we enjoy having you on here. You got some great opinions, and we do always love the pro Ravens people in the national media. There's not a ton, so we try to gravitate to them when we can. But I guess first things first, we'll start with you. What's just the quarantine setup? What's that been like for you? We've been trying to sort of get the lay of the land with all of our guests we've had on here. What's the past 3 months been looking like for Connor?
Well, it's been a little bit of a roller coaster. It was interesting for us at Bleacher Report because us being in Midtown Manhattan, which, as everybody knows, had quite the wild spike out of nowhere. Turner was super proactive and actually had us stop going to the office before the city shut down, which we're really fortunate of that. But at the same time, it wasn't like hey, this is the date. It was kind of, you wake up and, we're not going to the office anymore. And for someone like me, I work from home sometimes, but I go in a lot, and 3 studio shows a week at the time. And I had a really nice dual monitor setup that you could just crank through film that I plug my MacBook to. So I was lucky that I brought my MacBook home, but could not get to the rest of my setup. And from there on, it was just basically accepting mail every day from our production team to turn my apartment into a mini studio, because we still had to get the draft production going. We were still doing Stick to Football 3 times a week, and actually in the process, right in the middle of converting it to a live show for the Bleacher Report app and a YouTube show. So we're really lucky at Bleacher Report that we have a tech side of the company that is brilliant. I would consider them ahead of the curve. And we were able to still do not only just as much work, but actually more draft coverage and NFL coverage and college football coverage this year, even when the pandemic shut down the Northeast. But on my side of things, it was definitely a challenge, like anyone else, because, sure, we're inside, we're watching players, we're doing everything we can from home at a pretty good speed, but setting up production equipment, doing tests whenever I'm not doing other things, that's a lot of extra hours onto the schedule. While also, let's be real, you're navigating a very stressful aspect of life. It was more difficult to even go out and get groceries around here or do little things like that. And it was definitely a challenge. And I'm just really happy and fortunate that my family's been healthy. It seems like, my coworkers have been able to go full throttle here with work. And I don't know about you guys, but it finally seems like there's a little bit of a light here at the end of the tunnel where things are slowly, very slowly here, getting back to normal.
Yeah, we've definitely kind of had this, not a goal, but I guess kind of a paradise, if you could call it, that maybe things will be back into the full swing in some capacity by the 4th of July, which would be fitting. So we've kind of had that, and that would be training camp, obviously, shortly after. But as a person who covers the draft for a living, and obviously February through April is the time of the year where you really make your hay. In that sense, how would you summarize exactly how different the first half of this year has been for you professionally compared to a typical year, and maybe, summarizing things that benefited you or did not?
Yeah, well, we came out of the gate, absolutely flying, because you get off of the New Year schedule and you go really right to the Senior Bowl. And then this was actually the first year for me where I was a member of the national media that covered the Super Bowl week. Usually I don't go down there because, for me, it's kind of in the heart of draft season or the launch of draft season. I'm not going to be covering the actual game, but this year it was different because Stick to Football and Bleacher Report had a gigantic presence down in Miami, and we were doing a ton of interviews. There was a lot of prospects there to talk to, a lot of players there to talk to. So I went from Senior Bowl to Super Bowl, a very, very small lull, and then into the Combine. And when you got to the Combine, there was starting to become this feel and the sense that this pandemic was getting very close to home for everyone. It was a feeling of people a little more cautious, a little more nervous. And for me, where I work with my coworkers, some of them, my co-hosts remotely, like Matt Miller, this was the sense of, hey, I might not see you again for a long time because there's a chance that our travel is going to be shut down. Little did we know that we wouldn't even be able to get into our studios. So after that, it became, a little bit challenging because it was so different. I do rely on pro days for information from scouts and executives that travel to those pro days because with my schedule, I'm not going to travel to pro days, but I usually do have some kind of bridge to get all the information I need from those pro days. So no pro days actually cut out some areas where you get more info. Now, can some of that info be misleading or bad at times? Sure, but there's also valuable things that come out of those. So that was really challenging. I think on the flip side of it, looking for a positive, when you're stuck inside, there was simply probably more time, I think, to watch film at times this year and without biases, which was really interesting to me. I think I oddly enjoyed that part of the process. Like I said, we had a lot of tech and production tests that did eat a lot of my calendar, but I also found myself filling a void because it felt like when the pandemic started, there was a lot of people that obviously do not work in the NFL draft industry. They work jobs that this had flipped their world upside down, and there was boredom, there was anxiety, there was nervousness. I was more busy than ever, and obviously we've hit a quiet time now, but I think that was super interesting to me. You do have to learn how to navigate different challenges, whether it was new ways to get info about players and teams and all of those things along those lines, while also doing live production, really from where you live and function in everyday life. So it was totally different, and it's been a wild year. And I think if there's anything I learned from it is that specifically for us at Bleacher Report and a lot of people probably in the national media, is that you roll with the punches. I mean, you're not just going to stop. We're fortunate enough where we have people supporting us that we were still able to cover the draft, still able to cover football. And the NFL has certainly not taken a step back or slowed down one bit.
So it sounds like it definitely affected you in a lot of different ways. Do you think with the benefit of hindsight that this type of draft process was maybe better for the teams and the players, or do you think there were a lot of drawbacks with the process that maybe kind of gummed up the works a little bit as opposed to a typical year?
I think it was definitely worse for the players. I think the problem is a lot of guys are naturally fringe guys when it comes to the draft. There are players that have projections anywhere from the 4th round to being an undrafted free agent. And when I say that, that could go as far as not being a priority undrafted free agent. That could be a guy that your agent is making calls and you're trying to get a camp invite somewhere. So I think, unfortunately for players in that range, which is a giant range, you could be hurt by the process because you might have not gotten a combine invite and then your pro day might have been, canceled, and you're sitting there and you're like, wow, I can't even do local visits with teams that might have given me a shot. And I think it's super unfair. It's actually such an interesting scenario where for the first time ever, we saw the NCAA grant a waiver request for a player that participated in the NFL Combine to return to school. It was the punter at Arizona State. And I think when you look at Michael Turk, it's something that, the justification was, hey, I couldn't go through a normal draft process, and it led to me being undrafted. And fortunately, the NCAA did comply with that request. But that goes to show you how much it can impact in a negative way players. And I think for the team side of it, it's a little bit more 50-50, right? Because teams would like to capitalize on those players. Teams would like to land guys that ended up going undrafted, and they say, hey, we took this guy in the 7th round because we think he has an athletic profile and a character profile that we got to see from visits, that we got to see from testing times, that we got to see from in-person interviews. And once again, those visits where we're going to take a flyer him on the 7th round and develop him. And those kind of players, unfortunately, most of the time go undrafted in these scenarios. So It was very interesting to me, getting to interview a lot of players that month leading up to the draft. Their schedules were absolutely crazy. I even got to, FaceTime or streams like this, Zoom call different players and, talking to them, talking to their agents. It's crazy, right? I mean, because there's no system in place. You could be going from a Skype interview to a Zoom interview to, there's like millions of different platforms right now where you're talking to different people across the world. And I think even something like that could be stressful because let's not forget, these guys are still training, right? These guys some of them are rehabbing, and it's gone as far to affect, free agency. I know one familiar thing for you guys is look at a guy like Tony Jefferson, right? I think Tony is somebody that was prepared for the potential of the team moving on from him. And this was during his rehab where Tony's a really good player, and Tony still is a really good player and is probably going to come back from rehab being a really good player. And I think, look at free agency, he hasn't been able to visit teams for them to check out how his rehab is going. When you're in a situation like that, it's impossible to be signed because medically, and we've seen it a little bit with Jadeveon Clowney to an extent, and a lot of people are sitting there looking at the money and it's like, well, yeah, the money plays into it, but a lot of it plays into, doing medical exams. So it goes to show you this didn't just affect the day three, the undrafted players in the draft. This has affected NFL free agency, and it really is unprecedented. And I think you're going to see the teams that are more prepared, that have a process in place, that have had the processes in place for quite some time now, probably capitalize more so in teams that are in a little bit more volatile state of their franchises right now.
Absolutely. And then now that you've completed, the 2020 draft process, you're getting well into your preliminary 2021. Looking back at an introspective standpoint, how have you learned about yourself as a draft analyst through this unique process, would you say? Is there anything that you can kind of look back now as a whole and say, I learned blank this year?
That's a great question. I think that I've learned to trust myself, actually, which is, it sounds like really dumb when you think about it. Like, I'm 28 years old. By now, you should feel, somewhat confident in your work or confident in your findings. And I think there was a period of time where when I was really young that I was almost unjustifiably confident in a sense where that was leading to a lot of misses that should not happen. But you're young, you learn process, right? And it's not like I came from a family of football coaches or football scouts where those processes were taught to me when I was 17 or 18. Instead, those processes were being taught to me more when I was, 22 and 23. So I think there's that side of it. And then there's also the side of it where you become so unsure and you might rely on, talking to coaches and scouts and hearing their opinion. And then you go, wow, I actually think that must be right. I think there's a middle ground in between those two. And I think I've become really better at, consuming and digesting information and being able to form an opinion that I stand on, where I might watch a player and watch his film and then have a good sense of what he's going to do at the combine. There's always people I'm going to talk to that have had, either done school checks or character interviews. I fortunately get to do plenty of interviews of my own. Love talking to all these players. And then you might talk to a coach and they go, man, that guy sucked. Like, we don't even have him as draftable and you have him in the second or third round. I think you need to digest maybe why that coach doesn't like him, right? Like, maybe that player doesn't fit in their scheme at all and they just write him off right away, while you look at it and go, there's a lot of ways to do this, right? And I think it could tie down to somebody like Lamar Jackson. There were plenty of, and it's, everybody knows this, but there were plenty of people in the media that are credible people that forget the whole wide receiver thing, but they were wondering, or questioned Lamar Jackson's ability to grow as a passer. And rather than that, you're missing the picture that when you're that gifted of a runner, is there a coaching scheme out there, a coaching system, a coaching fit out there that can use his running ability while growing as a passer? I think we've seen that over the last 2 years. That's one example of a million. But I think I've done a better job understanding with myself, is there a home for the player? Will the league, use this player's skill set in the modern NFL? And why are you standing on the table for that player in that spot? So just cleaning up your own process every year. I feel like this year was one of those years where I was like, wow, I feel like I finally have my footing and can make major strides where I could scout, instead of ranking 150 players, I have a process in place where by myself, I can rank 200 players. And then hopefully next year, that number grows to 250, maybe 300, depending on my schedule, how much travel I have to do this year and things like that. I think that's something that's really exciting to me.
That's awesome. And we definitely wanted to ask that because this has definitely been a very introspective time for, I think, everyone in the country, no matter what your profession, and something is process-based, but also sort of subjective with what you do. I think that's something where you could definitely learn a lot about yourself in a time like this. But as far as the draft itself and how it played out, we always enter the draft with expectations and they're always shot right away. Do you think that happened more so this year, the same, maybe a little bit less? What do you think?
I think it's interesting. I think when you look at it, with the draft as a whole, you have to wonder, with this draft specifically, right? Like, how is something like rookie minicamp, lack of rookie minicamp, lack of time getting these guys ready, going to impact things? Now, I think there's two sides of it. I think there's one side that people are saying don't expect rookie impact at all. That's not the NFL we live in today anymore. Teams drafting players with a plan, and teams are drafting players with an idea where within 2 weeks of practice, you're going to know if the guy's ready to go or not. And those shorts and padless practices, don't necessarily mean a lot. But then there's also things like, look at a guy like Joe Burrow that, let's be real, the team moved on from Andy Dalton, right? And said, that's when you do that, you're saying, hey, here's the keys. You get ready to go in a division that you have Baltimore. You have a Steelers team that's going to be firing full cylinder this year, assuming Big Ben's okay. We saw what their defense could do last year. And you have a Browns team that fell short of expectations last year, but a Browns team that on paper should be a competitive football team. That's a lot of pressure for Joe Burrow, where you don't really want to be missing anything. You're throwing to a new cast of players. You're working with a coach that you didn't get to spend time with at the Senior Bowl, unfortunately, and a lot of different things like that. So I think that's something where being a quarterback in the NFL, there's a lot of expectations, a lot of questions, and a lot of processes of being ready to go. It's going to be tougher for someone like that. And I think Joe is equipped to handle it. But I think when you look at rookie expectations, it's going to be different across the board. It's going to be hard for a quarterback like that, where he's expected to elevate a franchise that has struggled, versus you look at somebody like CeeDee Lamb going to the Cowboys, right? CeeDee Lamb's going to be the third receiver for an offense that is going to be firing on all cylinders, with Michael Gallup, 1,000-yard guy, and Amari Cooper, a true number one. You have a great running game, a great offensive line, a quarterback that I think is ascending much quicker than people give him credit for, and a coach that I think took a year off and is going to come in and learn from his mistakes and call a really more effective offense than Jason Garrett did, where CeeDee Lamb is the icing on top, right? It's a guy that what we get from him, great, but we're not expecting him to be the savior. So like everything else, it varies situation to situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And now that the dust has settled and moving into this draft in a little bit more detail, looking back, the first round, it felt like was pretty chalk to start off a little bit. There was no trades for, I think, the second time in the past decade over the first 10 picks and all those things. But what would you say, if you could think and point to a draftee that surprised you overall throughout the first round, or maybe just a higher profile into the second round?
I think the Damon Arnette pick is one that comes to mind when you look at it for a team like the Raiders. Now, that to me is a situation where Mike Mayock is, and I really am a fan of what he's done. I'm really a fan of actually the direction that franchise has gone in. It's a situation that, in my opinion, he's going to have to learn from, because you could sit there and stand on the table for a player, right? And that's okay. And Damon Arnette, I think, will actually be an okay cornerback. I think you need to understand the draft around you. And you could sit there and say, hey, there was no trade offers that we liked, or we really liked this player. And once again, who knows? Maybe he's a star. Maybe I'm wrong. But time and time again proves that it's not often the case with a lot of situations as outliers like that, where it felt like such a reach that even if the player is great, you need to understand the rest of the board around you. And the reason I highlight Mike Mayock, a guy, once again, that I'm a really big fan of, I think understands value somehow on day 3 better than any other GM in the league, while doesn't understand value on day 1, Cleveland Farrell, year 1. And I liked Cleveland, and I thought he was a top 15 player, but you took him third. You took him,
over Josh Allen.
Things like that, where it's like now you might not understand the board, I think. And I think and everybody has their flaws. If Mayock starts to understand the board a little better, he's going to pick up more picks. He's going to get the players he likes anyway. but he's going to increase the value that comes out of each draft. And I thought this year was a good thing. You know, I thought they got 2 starters on day 3. You look at Amik Robertson, you look at John Simpson. That's a great job. But once again, when you have that extra first-round pick and you look at what they traded away to acquire that extra capital, I think you need to be, you know, a little bit more aware of how things are going to fall. So that one surprised me a lot. When you look at the rest of it, you know, nothing was too startling, to be honest with you. The quarterbacks went exactly where we thought they would go. A receiver fell. It was the guy I thought would not, but a receiver did fall in CeeDee Lamb. You know, I'm not even going to pretend that I'm super surprised by Jalen Reagor, because teams overdraft speed at wide receiver for 25, 30, maybe as long as the draft has existed, it actually feels like. So overall, things were actually somewhat smooth.
Yeah, definitely. It was definitely fun from our perspective. I mean, you're a very connected guy. For us, we were just kind of flying blind. So it was pretty cool in that respect, especially with the whole way that it played out logistically with Goodell in the basement and everything. I loved it. But looking at the most premium position, you already mentioned a couple of them. It's quarterback, obviously. Outside of Burrow, which one of them, looking back now and seeing all the situations that they're in, which one would you buy stock, not including Burrow, on?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think it's, you know, by default for me, it's Tua, because I think the gap from, you know, Burrow, right, number 1, nobody's really going to sit here and argue with that. But Tua, number 2, and then I had a pretty big gap, actually, to Jordan Love and then Justin Herbert. And it went the opposite way, but that's how I personally saw it. I think when you look at it, you know, Tua is just flat out a much better player. Now, Justin Herbert is going into an offense where they have a lot of pieces, and they have a coach that I believe in, but it's hard to fully believe in him as a quarterback right now. And then when you look at Jordan Love, you know, Green Bay has a history of doing this, right? And Green Bay, once again, has a lot of pieces on offense that you feel pretty good about overall. But Tua is just simply the much more pro-ready player. I think the injuries are going to be they're going to be a coin toss, which is horrible to say, but if he ends up being like Sam Bradford, would anyone be surprised? No. If he ends up being Drew Brees, would anyone be surprised? I know I personally wouldn't. So I think when you look at it and you go to a Miami situation, that are things getting better? Yes. Are things where they need to be? Far from it. I think when you look at it, you know, the offensive line has a lot of questions still. They really, really do. And when you look at wide receiver, I like Devontae Parker. I think Preston Williams is, you know, he's come back from a serious injury, but before that, things looked good. Hopefully Mike Gesicki can continue to trend upwards. So Tua is the most talented player of the other quarterbacks, but he's also in the worst situation. But I'll always believe in the player that can elevate those around him versus the other guys that, let's be real, with Herbert and Love, there was a lot of times where they were the problem on their offense. I mean, Herbert played behind an offensive line that was the best offensive line in the country, and you're going to see a guy like Penny Sewell probably go in the top 3 picks next year. He's one of the best offensive linemen I've ever seen in college. And I think when you look at Love, he even told us on Six Football, I tried to play hero ball. And some guys don't learn from that, and some guys do, so we'll see how that one goes. But I just think Tua is so pro-ready in a sense of where his game's at right now, that if the physical side can hold up, that he'll be the guy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always kind of equate, you know, the risk with Tua. You mentioned the coin flip, and I think not necessarily stylistically, but maybe an Andrew Luck-like career is the way that we could see Tua panning out. And would you take that? Yeah, absolutely. You would take, you know, those 5-6 years of Andrew Luck being awesome. But switching over to the defensive side of the ball, what were some of your favorite defensive picks overall? And if you were, you know, a betting man putting money down on defensive rookie of the year based on situation where you see production, immediate impact, who do you like?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think when you look at it, you know, it's no secret, or you'd be a fool to not see Chase Young coming in and being a very productive player right away. I think when you look at the defensive line he's on, it's really exciting to think about the matchups he's going to get. When you look at how pro-ready of a pass rusher he is, he's somebody that should come in and have 10 sacks right away. It's kind of like Myles Garrett, where you look at it and you go, okay, it's going to click from day one. There's no athleticism concerns. There's no technique concerns. You're not really concerned about the player adjusting because the jumps he made at the college level and how, you know, the mental
competition he faced as well.
It's a great point. Yeah, he played in a conference where he got to go against players that are really good on the offensive line at times. So I think you'd be foolish to say, Chase Young is somebody that's, he's going to come in and he's going to be the lock of a favorite. There's no doubt about that. And then we kind of had this weird lull, right? Like I love Jeff Okudah, and Jeff Okudah is going to be great for the Lions. But if we go the full season without talking about Jeff Okudah, would anyone be surprised? Probably not, because the Lions are probably going to be bad. And realistically, teams should not throw at Jeff Okudah that much this year, where his on-ball production will probably not be high enough where you're in the conversation as a corner. So I love Jeff Okudah. I think he's going to be a top 10 NFL corner very, very shortly. I just don't think we'll talk about him that much. And the same will be said for Derek Brown. The Panthers got absolutely demolished on their run defense last year, got ran over. Derek Brown is somebody that's going to help a lot, but is Derek Brown going to come in and have 10 sacks from the interior of the defensive line? That's just not the case. So I think when you look at it, and then Isaiah Simmons is exciting, but they're coming out and saying, hey, we're not going to throw a lot of rolls on his plate and all these things. And I don't think he was an elite linebacker prospect. I thought he was an elite defensive prospect, where I actually like what he did more at safety and kind of, jack of all trades kind of role like that. So then you kind of go down on the board because you have all these defensive backs and Javon Kinlaw and I kind of look at the linebacker group, Kenneth Murray and Patrick Queen and to an extent Jordan Brooks. I still think that pick was a little early. I don't know. For me, it's more Queen and Murray and then Brooks somewhere down the line. I think when you look at Queen and Murray, they're going to places where they're going to be allowed to run around with a lot of freedom, and they're going to be allowed to make plays in coverage, and they're going to be allowed to go sideline to sideline, and they're both going to be used as blitzers, where the on-ball production should be phenomenal, honestly. It really should be. I think they're playing behind defensive lines that they'll be somewhat protected, in a sense, kept clean. There's not going to be an overwhelming amount of I have that question with Isaiah Simmons at times, right? If the Cardinals just stick Isaiah Simmons at whether it's Mike backer and they expect him to be a traditional Mike backer, yeah, they added pieces on the defensive line in free agency to hopefully keep guys like him clean, but you still haven't seen it yet. So I think when you look at Baltimore's scheme, I think when you look at what the Chargers are going to do, that's why they were so proactive in trading up from Murray. I think those are two guys that play positions that are very stat-friendly positions. I think they're going to be allowed to do a lot of different things to elevate their defenses, and I think they're going to be going to situations where they are kept clean enough that they'll be very, very productive players from day one, and they should honestly be 3-down linebackers from day one.
Definitely. Well, we like to hear that on the Queen front. Obviously, the Ravens are a team. The New York Jets, your team, obviously. It's been a tough go of things. I feel like we always seem to touch on this whenever you hop on with us here. But with this draft now in the rear view, offseason's pretty much in the rear view at this point. How would you sum up Joe Douglas's tenure as GM thus far? And do you kind of think you have a good idea at this point of how he's trying to reconstruct things up there?
Yeah, most definitely. I think slow and steady is one way to describe it. There was times where I was pretty vocal that, free agency was not overly impressive. I think Connor McGovern is a much needed add at center. I think that they added a lot of bodies on offensive line in free agency. Besides McGovern, I don't really see them being guys that will necessarily elevate the team in the the impact level that they need. It should be enough to hopefully hold the fort for a guy like Darnold. And then you look at it, across the board, losing Robbie Anderson, signing Brashad Perriman. I actually liked Robbie Anderson a lot. I'm not the biggest believer in Brashad Perriman, even though he had that 5-week stretch in Tampa. We'll see how that goes. So free agency was kind of lukewarm on the entire thing. I thought the draft was a really, really nice step for the franchise, because it felt like the first time in a while that the draft was done in a very professional sense, right? And what I mean by that is you guys have pretty much dealt with this your entire existence as fans of the Ravens, because you've had GMs that both understand value, both understand executing trades. And it's no coincidence that Joe Douglas comes from that franchise where you see how value is placed. You see how building a roster from the ground up is placed. And I think with the Jets, it was something where you look at it and you go, okay, they took Mekhi Becton. They needed a franchise left tackle. You feel pretty good about Mekhi Becton, especially as a run blocker from day one. And then, so you're building from the trenches. You're adding up what you consider a really big piece. You go get Denzel Mims in the second round after trading back 10 spots, picking up 3 extra picks, which, let's be real, the Jets are a team on paper that have a lot of holes, that have problems, not just on, the first line of the roster or the depth chart. It goes across the board in terms of entire depth. And I think Douglas did a good job acquiring more lotto tickets, getting more chances to build the roster. They're a team that is going to be built from the trenches. The one fortunate side for him is he's walking into a situation where the defensive line was already pretty good. I mean, you had Quinton Williams there, who's hopefully can grow this year, but you have someone like Steve McClendon, you have Henry Anderson, you have some young defensive linemen that are rotational guys that really, really held their own last year in Foley Fatukasi and Nathan Shepard. They have CJ Mosley in the middle of the defense. The middle of the defense it's already built. So you could allocate so many assets to the offensive line and receiver, hopefully, where you feel good about that. And I think for Joe Douglas, it was a draft where he didn't try to come out and win Executive of the Year in his first shot, right? And I think that's actually a good thing because let's be real, Adam Gase has struggled for quite a few years now. Joe Douglas is on a 6-year deal. Adam Gase is not. And if things fall apart this year on the field from coaching, you sit and look there and you go, okay, the roster is not perfect, but it got better on paper. And you have a quarterback that has the talent where he should be getting better. So I think it is something with Joe Douglas that he's being patient. He understands long-term that the day might come where he has to hire his own head coach, and they're flexible with the salary cap. They have draft assets, and they have some young players on the roster where it's a very, very slow and steady approach. But I think, for the first time in a long time for the Jets, really since Eric Mangini was there over a decade ago, it's, hey, how do we set up a team that can win for 5 years, not a team that can win for a half a season to 1 year? And I think that's promising to see.
Absolutely. They definitely are getting the building blocks. And then obviously moving on to the Ravens, we have you on. We want to get your opinion on the way their offseason is boiled down. And it seems like, their philosophy was to address these holes in one round or another and double down on the positions. They did that 3 separate times. Do you agree that that is a successful strategy? And what did you think of Eric DeCosta's strategy in this draft overall?
Yeah, I think it is. Now, it's one that, it's nice to be able to do that, right? Like if you're the New York Jets, you can't go in and take the top off-ball linebacker that falls to you because you have like a million different needs everywhere else. Now, to DeCosta's credit, he's been a guy that's helped build where the Ravens are. So he set himself up to be in that luxurious position where, you have a great running back in Mark Ingram. Well, we'll get our next great one right now in J.K. Dobbins. So you trade for a good defensive lineman and you have some good piece on the defensive line. Well, we'll take the guy that's going to start in 2 years when their money rolls up and Justin Matabuke and things like that. Now, it's a great position to be in, but you still deserve the credit for, number one, scouting the players, right? Like I look at it, and maybe I'll be wrong about this, but Seattle took Jordan Brooks over Patrick Queen. So you can't sit there and go, well, anyone would have taken Patrick Queen because a lot of teams passed on Patrick Queen. And I thought he was a much better player than where he went drafted. I thought he was, most importantly, the best cover linebacker and man coverage in this entire draft. And that's how you win a lot of games in the NFL right now because you're seeing running backs and tight ends that are mismatched players across the board in the passing game. I mean, you look at the Super Bowl and you could really see all you need to with a guy like George Kittle, a guy like Travis Kelce. The Chiefs added Clyde Edwards-Helaire because they want a mismatch running back for the passing game. So
you also see Fred Warner, who fits that profile as that kind of linebacker.
That's a really good comparison. And I think when you look at it, it's not just those 3 picks because it was funny when we were sitting there during the draft and, we're doing the live stream. And as an analyst, I'm serving not just one fan base or not just one division, but every single audience. So every time the Ravens come up and make a pick and you give them an A, it's like, well, they're taking players that I really like at really good spots. Now, Devin Duvernay is one that is going to go, one way or the other. He's got great speed. He's really good straight line kind of guy. The reason I was low on him is because it's like the body type and play style doesn't fit the position. Like I don't see him as a shifty slot player. I saw him as a downfield kind of guy with great hands, no doubt about that. But can he be a shifty slot player in that offense, or are they going to use him maybe on the outside in ways that I don't expect? That was the only pick that I was like, okay, the league was a little higher on Duvernay than I personally was. Malik Harrison is somebody that I thought was a traditional Mike backer that played that role, honestly, outstanding at Ohio State. And you look at the Ravens, the middle of that defense now, you could put Malik at the mic and say, hey, get downhill, clear the alley, while you have Patrick Queen running around. And I think that's constructing – some teams get there and you look at their drafts and you go, well, they were just taking players. And then other teams go in there and they were taking talented players that fit their scheme, that fit their process. And you see it with J.K. Dobbins. He'll be the next up, 1,000-yard back in that offense. You see it with Justin Matabuke, the guy that's going to be probably not playing maybe a ton this year, enough, but I would say 40% of snaps. I don't think he'll be some defensive lineman that comes in and gives you 80 to 90% of snaps, and that's okay. And 2 years from now, he will. And I think when you look at Queen and Harrison, how they complement each other, and then you look at, Tyree Phillips, a guy that's just an absolute mauler on the interior of the offensive line. What I like about the Ravens is they come in, they draft for scheme. A lot of teams make the mistake of drafting for scheme and compromising on talent. And I will say Baltimore just never really does that. And that's super, super impressive to me to be able to balance both. It's a very difficult thing to do in the NFL.
Definitely. And we had all those guys written down. You touched on pretty much all of them. So moving on to one of our last questions here, just looking around at the rest of the AFC North, you touched on it a little bit earlier in the interview, but it seems like the other three teams, they at least had reasonably good off seasons. And I think at least two of them had pretty great off seasons. So where do you think, things kind of stand with this division? And which of those three teams do you think are kind of in the mix to take the division away from the Ravens this season, if at all?
Well, I think it's going to be a really nasty head-to-head battle with the Steelers and Baltimore, with the caveat, can Big Ben stay healthy? Because if he can't, and it's not like an injury where it's like, oh man, he's 25 and it was a freak hit, right? It's not one of those injuries. He's older. Let's call it what it is. He does not keep himself in shape. And I know there was a lot of backlash when Jay Glazer wrote that report, but I mean, you don't need to speak to anyone around Big Ben. You could look at pictures of him and say, okay,
Ben Roethlisberger is not Tom Brady. That is a polar opposite comparison.
If you read the Bruce Arians book, Bruce talked about how he would spend his off seasons, I think, down at Bruce's house in Georgia or something, and he would just play golf and drink 15 Miller Lights on the weekends and just completely let himself go.
Exactly. And sure, but eventually the body's going to break down. So if Big Ben can come back and is motivated and is working out right now and he's good to go for camp, and the Steelers have a really good defense, they've added pieces on offense, it'll be a dogfight between those two teams. Now, I would still pick Baltimore because I'll go with what I know versus what I think might happen. The Steelers winning 13 games is I think that could happen. But I also think that, they could run into the bad luck injury bug again. And I could see it where Baltimore wins 13 games, the Steelers win, 10 games, and you both have them in the playoffs. That would shock nobody. That's kind of how I expect it to go. The Bengals are going to be better. It's going to be a building process. A lot of young players, a young quarterback. The thing with the Bengals with me is I still don't know if I believe in Zach Taylor. And I'm not saying I don't. I'm saying, what have we seen so far that gives you reason to believe in him? I haven't seen
still a question mark. It's
a question mark. So, and I love Joe Burrow, but it's not going to be a miracle fix right away. The Bengals are going to be better. They're not there yet. And then the Browns, if it doesn't click for Baker Mayfield right now, you seriously have to wonder when it will, because it's not a Sam Darnold situation where it's man, bad coaching, nothing around him. With Baker, it's okay, you could say what you want about the coaching. He picked Freddie Kitchens as the coach. That was Baker Mayfield's decision to the front office and ownership. So, okay, maybe it was a bad decision. You get one of those and you wipe it clean. Talent on offense is very good on paper right now. They added 2 high-end offensive tackles. They have a stable of running backs that would start for any team. And they have a really good wide receiver group. And they have multiple tight ends that can catch the ball. So at some point, you're a coach that just spent a year under Gary Kubiak that should be running a scheme that is tailor-made to protect the quarterback because of the run game, which has, gone from Kubiak to the Shanahans. The tree of that run game is phenomenal and aids quarterbacks more so almost than anything we've seen in the NFL. So that's one where I look at it and go, I want to like the Browns, but I'm not putting my name on the Browns right now. And even last year, I didn't pick the Browns to win the division. I don't know if I did a show with you guys before the season where you asked me to make the pick, but I picked Baltimore. And
I think you did, yeah.
And it's one of those things where it's I'm going to go with what I know. I know I love the coaching staff, not just Harbaugh, but I think Roman is somebody that is one of the best play callers to his talent in the NFL. I think Lamar Jackson is, not going to be this one-year wonder that there's a weird portion of people out there that yell into this void that it's going to stop working. Okay, like he had an MVP season. Maybe he won't win an MVP this year, but he's going to be a really high-end player. Good run game, good defense. So I look at it. I think it's going to be an exciting division. I think it's not going to be easy. It's not. You're going to have a Steelers team that's going to throw everything they have at you, and I think it's going to be really close. But I think Baltimore is going to be able to hold everyone off. And the wild card of this all is probably it's going to be two things. It's going to be, can Big Ben stay healthy, and what level is he playing at? And what kind of step does Baker Mayfield take? Because those two quarterbacks have everything around them where they're franchises that should win 12 games. But once again, we'll see.
Absolutely. And you mentioned, Kubiak, Stefanski, and it's just really strange to me because I would never come to the conclusion that on the surface that maybe Baker Mayfield and Kirk Cousins have a lot of similarities now that we've seen Baker. But you think about it, Baker is going to be in space. He's going to be able to utilize the deep shots. He's going to have the strong running game. So that's a system that should really work for him. Although it is quite different from running, an exclusively spread kind of RPO offense at Oklahoma. So we shall see with the Browns for sure. Finally, we'll let you get out of here. We just wanted to let our listeners know what you guys' plans are at Stick to Football, what they can expect, because it's kind of the downtime before training camp and what you guys are gearing up for. And then we'll let you get out of here, my friend.
Yeah, we're planning to go back on late July. It's been a nice vacation, I like to call it. It's hard to stay away from everything football related and watching players. I always get excited for next year's draft.
It's your passion.
Already.
You can't.
Yeah, it's people got to realize I did this for free before it was my career, so it's not going away naturally like that. But yeah, Stick to Football. It'll be back in late July. It'll probably be bigger and better than ever, honestly, because I think the shows are going to be longer. The people that like the video aspect can still watch in the BR app and YouTube. The people that like the audio aspect are going to be getting their hour-plus shows again 3 times a week. And for me, I'm always hoping to do a lot more. I think I'm going to have a lot more projects away from Stick to Football, that I can't really fully unveil and discuss yet. But for me, this never stops. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm just really thankful that it seems like we're going to have football starting on time.
Absolutely. And we are thankful for you hopping on here with us, buddy. Before you get out of here, where can the people find you and your work?
Sure. At Connor J. Rogers on Twitter, at Connor James Rogers on Instagram, if that's your thing. I feel like I never stop tweeting. So even if I'm not working, that kind of doesn't go away. It's a horrible habit, but it is what it is, right? So, and of course, everywhere in the Bleacher Report app where I'm simply just at Connor. It's nice when you get to pick your username before it goes to public. So I was like, I'm just going to, for the first time ever on a social platform, I'm just going to make it at Connor.
That is awesome. Nice. Yeah. I can't wait until I can be Jake on something someday.
I'll tell you what, it is the best feeling in the world to just have your name, one name.
Yeah, that's pretty sick. But thanks again. Like I said, man, for coming on. Stay safe, stay healthy up there in the Big Apple, and hopefully things get back to normal here real soon. And football comes back, on time and everything.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate you having me. It's always good to talk to you.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you, Connor.
All right, sweet.
Awesome.
So, mailbag?
Yes, sir. I'm ready when you are.
Yeah, let me get the audio set up. How many questions do we get?
We have nope, that's a comment, not a question. Where are they? There they are. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 19. I will condense that into probably about 12.
Okay, cool. Yeah, whenever you're ready.
All right.
Cool. Okay, 3, 2, 1. All right, welcome on back to another edition of the Baltimore Beatdown Podcast. It is Wednesday, June 10th. My dudes, it's Wednesday, my dudes. My name is Jake Luke, and I'm joined by my eternal co-host, Spencer Nathaniel Schultz.
What's up, everybody? June 10th. We are 1 month out from my birthday, July 10th. A great day.
But who's counting, right? It's not, birthday month. Nobody's doing that, right?
Dude, I thought I wouldn't be excited for birthdays after maybe 25 or 21 or something.
Do you know yourself? Have you ever listen to your internal monologue because you're definitely like you've got birthday week guy written all over you. If not,
it's just like I don't like go too crazy, but I just have a good like. No matter what happens, my birthday week, I'm chilling. I have a smile on my face. I just feel good. I just enjoy my birthday. I don't know what it is, but I just have very positive. I guess credit probably to my mom growing up. She was a birthday week gal. And I think I just always have I just feel good. Good vibes my birthday week.
For the record, I think people that like try to poo-poo that can F right off.
Poo-poo.
I think,
Yeah, they can poo their pants.
Let people be positive about things.
Yeah, absolutely. But going on 27 feels good. J.K. Dobbins repping me this year. So that'll be my J.K. Dobbins year, I guess. Also my Ray Rice year. Still love you, Ray, no matter what. And it feels good. But yeah, summer, holy crap. It's like the dog days of late July outside today. I was doing some on-field work with some kids today, and I'm not participating in drills, and I am drenched still. I got done over an hour ago. Sweaty. It is humid. It is hasty, but I like it. I like the heat.
You know, it's bad
myself going to Florida eventually.
You know, it's bad when Mary and Andre Luke turn on the air conditioning without me having to ask.
Having to beg and plead.
My room, for whatever reason, my brother's is the same way. We're like a split rancher type house. So like our rooms are in the top two corners. They get so hot. And when it gets like this, it's just unbearable. And yeah, they've been.
You get like wide-eyed and like agitated, and it starts like making you really angry. Like when I have to stay somewhere that's hot like that, it like gets me like like caveman.
It just gets me absolutely in a bad mood. And just completely, it's like my room is just this oppressive, like muggy swamp. And I'm like, you know what? Can't do this.
I also, I even have to go no matter what. Like I do cold towel on the chest, like a little hand cloth or something.
You're like drama going into the valley to see Aquaman.
That is how I can't sleep when it's hot. I can sleep when it's 40 degrees comfortably with a blanket and whatever else, but hot does not. I just feel like a melted pool of gelatin, and I just can't do it.
Well, you're talking about Florida. You should probably go to Arizona then, because it's a dry heat.
I don't know. I just love Florida. I haven't been to Arizona. It's one of the, I think, like 7 states I haven't hit yet. Of the continental, I think that's one of the like 5. So I need to go do some Arizona. The thing about Arizona that freaks me out is like scorpions and a bunch of freaking desert monsters. That stuff.
Yeah, snakes and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. That bugs me, but yeah, I see Florida in my future. I do like the humidity, but Florida, you've got air conditioning when you're in Florida. They got good AC systems in there. Pools and AC systems are given. But I see myself being a Florida boy.
Well, you're a Florida man, is what I was going to say.
Florida man.
The Florida man. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Florida man. See, I'll look it up right now. July 10th, which is my birthday. Florida man. Look up your birthday and look up Florida man. Florida man runs up to Charlotte County Sheriff's deputy, drops his pants last year on my birthday, July 10th, 2019. Florida man runs up to Charlotte County Sheriff deputies, drops his pants. There's always a Florida man. You can look up your birthday. A Florida man with no arms arrested for stabbing tourists. That was the year prior.
Mine was so long that I had to click into it to get the full headline. Florida man, comma, drunk and naked, comma, allegedly set house on fire and failed cookie baking attempt. That's pretty clean, you know? I feel like that happens everywhere.
That's so McConaughey.
Yeah, you know, just getting back from watching the old Longhorns game down at the bar. Got back, thought I'd throw some cookies in. Had a couple of, shots of Courvoisier. And I just Casamigos, was having myself a good old day. Thought I'd have some cookies.
But it's all good because I
got back to my kitchen and was talking to my wife, and I said, "You got any cookies?" And she said, "No." And I said, "Be a lot cooler if you did."
So I got my Lincoln and I drove off into the sunset. Don't need a house, Lincoln. The car is your home.
We totally lost your connection there. It got really garbled, which just made that somehow even more.
It was just a horrible accent and Lincoln joke, impression and Lincoln joke. But yeah, Lincoln joke of Matthew McConaughey. That's what you missed. But yeah, Florida man. Look up your birthday, look up Florida man, and have yourself a smile.
Nice. Yeah. Me and Hayden Hurst and Cal Jr. August 24th.
I don't think I can recall. I think I got one good 1960s actor that's a classic actor.
I sneaky have a lot. Cal is definitely the big one. I remember Hayden Hurst I forget why I learned that was his birthday, but I was like, oh, there's another good one. Yeah, there's a couple.
Oh my God, my list is so obscure and sick. So I've got Nikola Tesla, the original Tesla, Sofia Vergara, Jessica Simpson. I actually do remember Jessica Simpson from this list. Jessica Simpson, that's a sick one. This is by far going to be number one favorite is Phyllis Smith, who is Phyllis from The Office, followed by number two, Antonio Brown. I'm scrolling down here and I missed the best one.
Maybe that's why you were
Adrian Grenier.
Blindly defending him last training camp, like at every turn. It's like
You're
such a big birthday guy. You're such a big birthday guy that you're like, oh, this guy's got my birthday too. I can't really give it.
I missed the sickest one. It's Adrian Grenier, Vince.
Oh, that's a good one. What do you think, E? Should I have a birthday party this year? Are we going to sponsor it? E, come on.
Sky, Victoria's Secret, all the good stuff. Good shit, Turtle. I need Turtle to play my birthday.
Yeah, that would be pretty good.
But yeah, those are my my birthday compadres. And yeah, Urban Meyer, okay, little football guy in there. But the rest of them don't know, and I already have a solid list. But yeah, we got some good birthday lists. What is your birthday? Your birthday is March?
August 24th.
Oh, August. For some reason I thought March. But yeah, we'll get there. We'll be able to celebrate our birthdays nice and clean. You guys can make a listener compilation singing happy birthday to us if you guys want.
We're not asking for that, but if you want
to have to, but you totally.
It's kind of, yeah, if you don't do it, you're probably going to get the cold shoulder a little bit.
Yeah, we'll see. The mailbag might get a little thinner if you don't. But moving on to the mailbag, now that we've digested, I'm not even going to go back. I'm just going to let that one sit. Yep. And I have diluted this entire thing. But moving on to the mailbag, the mailbag. Otavio Molar hits us with a three-pronger, our favorite. Who is more likely to leave? Ronnie Stanley, Mark Andrews, or Marlon Humphrey, or will all be re-signed? Off the bat, I'm going to have to go Andrews, if I had to guess. I don't know. The Ravens have a propensity of getting really great tight ends. Andrews also gets dinged up a lot. So this might be, it could happen to anyone. But if I had to pick a guy to maybe get hurt and lose some value of those three, I would probably pick Andrews. And I just find that Ronnie Stanley isn't going anywhere. I would be shocked if Ronnie Stanley leaves. And I would maybe be more surprised if Marlon Humphrey left. He just feels everything about Marlon Humphrey's tenure with the Ravens to this point. It just feels like lifelong Raven. He's 23, all pro, first round pick, Alabama. The way that he plays, the physical style he plays with, all that stuff just feels so Ravens. Feels like he's really embraced the culture and kind of, one of those blue blood guys like to kind of commit a little bit more. I feel like sometimes when they get to a good organization. So I feel like Hump is the least likely to leave.
Yeah, I've been also tracking. I'm starting to track his hot takes on Twitter a little bit because he's got them every day. So
he's a cat owner. So, I mean, he's a cat dad. It happens.
Yeah. So yesterday, Steve Carell, not funny to me. I quote tweeted it.
That hurt.
You can find me at Jake Luke, by the way, on Twitter. I quote tweeted it today on Marlon Has a Take. I should probably make it a hashtag. Then today, a tattoo, or there's a video of somebody getting a tattoo. He quote tweets it and says, most people regret having one. As a confirmed tattoo haver, do you regret having your tattoo?
No, I love my tattoo. My tattoo is arguably the worst, looking aesthetically. Not the very worst, but not the best. And I still love mine.
Well, so that was my Marlon Has a Take for today. But I mean, you talk about regretting a tattoo, Jacoby Jones, my God, you're not even close to that. I've seen yours. It's not quite on that level, but yeah, for the sake of the exercise, I'd say Andrews, but I think all three are going to be staying in the picture for the long term. I think in terms of the way things are set up right now, I expect Stanley back first on a long-term deal, Humphrey second on a long-term deal, and then I think they're going to get a deal done with Andrews down the line, maybe for something a little less conventional, but high guaranteed money. And I think he's going to remain in the picture as Lamar's go-to guy for the near future.
Absolutely. Otavio also asked, I'll just do two of the three prongs, but he basically asked, is Earl Thomas going to have a better year or a worse year? His reasons being, age as the regression, or will he be better because he's a year out from his leg injury and also in his second year in the Ravens system? That's a tough one. That's a tough one. I would just look to Eric Weddle kind of as, Weddle was maybe a little bit more spry in his first year, but then a little bit more confident into his second year in the scheme and the way the Ravens operate. And it feels like Earl is kind of going to end up shifting into that role a little more as the player that can roam and understand how to basically fuck with the quarterback pre-snap and try and throw things out, give different looks and disguise coverage and things like that. So better in what I think it's pretty neutral. I think he's going to lose another step. I think he lost a step since his heyday, and I think he's probably going to be a tick slower yet again. So I would say around the same, losing what he has physically just a hair and getting a little better.
Personal stuff going on, it doesn't always translate well over to having a great season, but it's kind of difficult because the stuff that he was doing well last year, and you're the first person on the bandwagon of the idea that you really couldn't quantify a lot of it. So if he starts giving up big plays, then I would say it's worse, but he's probably not going to have a better year in terms of just shutting down an entire half of the field like he was during points in 2019.
Plus, you have to look at who he's with. So, the Ravens offense got gashed on those 2 weeks, week 3, week 4, and really in bits of week 2 against the Cardinals. I've been going back a little bit pretty extensively, been charting some screens and stuff, but Earl Thomas didn't really give up any big plays, but the defense allowed 1,000 yards. So now that it's Jimmy Smith, it's Marlon Humphrey, it's Marcus Peters, it's Tavon Young, it's Chuck Clark, Deshaun Elliott hopefully is healthy, Geno Stone maybe is a factor, who knows. But if those guys are all healthy, Earl Thomas is not the one you're going to want to throw at. He's going to be the one that is allowed the most freedom. He's going to be allowed to make more plays, probably go ball hawk a little bit more. If the more that those corners can play man and be on an island, so to speak, the more freedom he's going to have to just straight up play chess with the quarterback. And if those guys are all healthy, I would expect maybe a better year. If they are not, I would expect maybe a worse year.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, moving on. Joe Wiz Sports said, awesome, let's connect. Sure. Okay, moving on. Joe Boken.
Let's link and build. Where you at, player?
Get away, it's hot. Get away, it's hot. Joe Boken, Ninja JC. It takes 11 plus blue chip players to make a Super Bowl team. How many do the Ravens have? That is what Daniel Jeremiah likes to say. And he's a guy who comes from the Ravens system. I think he says 11 blue chip players.
I thought it was low. I thought it was lower than that.
I think 11 sounds high.
I haven't listened to Move to 6 in a while, but I thought I remembered it being like 5 or 6. I think Fox talks about it too from time to time.
I think it's like 6. I think it's like 5 or 6 maybe. But anyway, how many do the Ravens have? Obviously, you look at Lamar.
Stanley, Humphrey, Earl, Tucker.
I would say Mark Andrews as well.
Yeah, him too.
He's a very established tight end at this point. Like success, not established, but like he is a fucking problem for opposing defenses, and they want to take him away. And then Calais Campbell too for sure.
Yeah, good. But yeah, I forgot about him. Okay, so there's 7. I think Hollywood has the potential to be, but he is not yet.
Orlando Brown has the potential to be, but I would definitely not say he's blue chip. I would say he's quality, like solid quality starter. But you want to, especially with Ronnie Stanley on the other side, you have to kind of compare. And Orlando Brown's got some stuff to clean up still.
And for all the fun people have with running backs, I think J.K. Dobbins potential.
Yeah, I mean, Mark Ingram just had a 15 touchdown year and was super duper effective.
So you could probably throw him in there too, but with the his age, maybe not as much.
Yeah, I wouldn't say he's you're not going to put him in. No one's going to have a conversation and be like, top 5 running backs. Mark Ingram's probably not going to be in there.
Yeah, but yeah, I agree. Production wise, though, he was just so fucking good last year.
It's a shame that like he couldn't have had this when he was 23 years old or 25 years old, but he still is super effective.
Yeah, I mean, all that he even did in like the receiving game and stuff, he was just very impressive. So
Marcus Peters is 3-time All-Pro.
Yeah, he's definitely he has moments where he is very much a blue chip player, and then moments where he is very much not.
Marcus Peters to me is I can't think of the right way to put it. There could be a very big regression from him, but there also could be like he could end up being more impactful in actual coverage downfield than Marlon Humphrey just because he has those fucking ball skills.
I feel like he's never had a year where he like hasn't been the ball hawk that we know him to be. Like he's had struggles. He's gotten burnt and rough stretches of play as far as fundamentals, but he has always gotten his hands on the ball.
Yes, he has arguably, some of the best ball skills in all of the NFL as a DB. So I did a detailed, we talked about it so much. I did a detailed breakdown of how Baltimore is a really good fit for him. And we end up interviewing Connor Rogers, and he's kind of mentioning that the Ravens will draft talent. And then, as we just always say, we end up saying it every episode. So here is the ring of the bell. They put guys in a position to succeed as opposed to asking them to do things they're not comfortable with. And with Marcus Peters, let him read the quarterback, let him kind of play safety as a corner at times almost in those flats and stuff, and he's going to go ball hawk. So Marcus Peters could very well end up having like a 8 interception year on this Ravens team because we just mentioned Earl Thomas. Where do you throw the ball now? If Patrick Queen ends up being decently effective as a coverage linebacker, LJ Ford has that ability. Chuck Clark is down in the box. He's very effective in those underneath coverages. Where's the weak point? Where do you pick on? If you're going to pick on Marcus Peters, that's not great, I don't think, with Earl Thomas looking over top and things. So very interesting. So let's say potentially, as few as maybe 6, as many as 8 at the end of this year. But moving on, eMain7 said, 2-parter. Let me read this. More screens and jet sweeps. Get the ball in the hands of playmakers. Hollywood Brown, Miles Boykin, Devin Duvernay. They have great blocking wide receivers. Split out the running backs, Boyle or Ricard to block as well. So many options. So his sentiment, I suppose, is more screens and jet sweeps. I am in the middle of tallying every single screen that the Ravens ran. I'm currently through 6 games to look at 455 freaking passes, but I think it'll be worth it trying to basically say how the offense could evolve. And I think that's an area. You look at Devin Duvernay, you look at James Prochet, and those are screen machines. Those are guys that are super effective on screens. Through 5 games at this point, I've charted. The Ravens have run 4 screens, and 2 games, Pittsburgh and Miami, they ran 0 screens. So definitely could see an increase in screens for sure. Moving on, Jacobs 99. This is the best question of the mailbag. Drew Brees is a sucker man. Yes or no?
Yeah, so that's my buddy Eric, and we saw each other the other day. The very first thing he said was, "Drew Brees, you a sucker, man."
Yeah, Ed Reed came out and said he wanted to keep it PG for the kids because they'll be seeing this. But Drew Brees, you're a sucker, man.
I would be saying a lot worse stuff if there weren't kids watching, but you a straight sucker, man, Drew Brees.
He was pissed.
Not happy.
Yeah, not happy at all. It's hard to say that Drew Brees isn't a sucker man, but
in this instance, yes.
When you look at his whole body of work, when he's getting inducted into the Hall of Fame, this is just going to be a minor hiccup. And you look at him basically getting the tweet from Trump and then kind of responding and doing what his teammates wanted. And
I think that brought him around very much, at least in the court of public opinion. Going back there,
he definitely was trying to cater towards the demographic that it goes without saying. But I think he just genuinely got so much backlash from his teammates. He had to feel like shit after that. So I believe in his heart of hearts, he didn't mean any damage. He had a personal belief about the flag, and then you end up just seeing, hey buddy, this wasn't about that.
That's just a classic case of like somebody who's just very much in the public eye that is just not on like Twitter,
right?
And then when they say something like that and it just completely blows it up, and then like one of his guys maybe comes to him and says, hey Drew, like the world is not happy with you right now.
Right, and if you watch his full little interview for like Yahoo Finance or something random, he was saying some good stuff and it was all great, but then at the end he just crashed and burned the plane, saying like making that statement and stuff. And I think that Wendell Pierce, who is a famous actor and has recently, yep, exactly, and has recently been on Jack Ryan on Amazon, and he had some insightful things to say regarding the comments.
I can't do this. I can't work for the CIA, or I can't do covert operations. What are you talking about?
That show secretly is so good. That show is so good.
It's just I can't unsee like Jim Halpert, unfortunately.
I can go down a wormhole if you want on freaking
Some terrorist points like an AK at him, and he just goes.
I can go on a John Krasinski rabbit hole.
Jim face there.
I have very strong opinions on him as a person. I have very strong John Krasinski opinions. We'll save it'll come out another day. We'll save that. We're in the mailbag.
Okay.
I think he's a dick. I think John Krasinski's a dick. That's all.
What?
I think he's a dick. All right. Look up John Krasinski, Jimmy Kimmel interview. And it was right after he had directed the movie with Emily Blunt, Quiet Place, which is a great movie. Loved watching it. I love The Office. I love Jim in The Office. I like Jack Ryan. I've heard good things about the Benghazi movie.
11 hours or whatever.
13 hours, whatever it is. All that stuff's great. But he just had this one interview that struck a chord with me, where he's on with Jimmy Kimmel, and it's after Quiet Place, is super successful, did really well at the box office, very profitable, low budget, did awesome. And he's sitting there, and he's got his beard, and he's done everything that he can to kind of make sure he doesn't get typecasted. And I get that. And, he's masculine. He wants to do action movies and stuff. Doesn't want to be Jim anymore. But he's sitting there. He has a good movie. He's like stroking his beard, and he's like, yeah, this point in my career, I've pretty much accomplished everything there is to accomplish. I've directed a successful movie. I've reached the pinnacle as an actor. So I actually think that I'm going to be retiring very soon from the film and movie industry, because I've pretty much just accomplished everything there is to accomplish. And I was like, who do you think you are? Fucking Tom Hanks? Like, what are you, not passionate about being an actor and being a director? You put all this time into it. Like, it was just a very pompous thing to say. And I didn't, ever since then, I've been like, John Krasinski, that guy's a dick, but I still like his work.
Do you want to hear Jim Halpert's take on your John Krasinski hatred?
Yes. Freaking Jim, man. Freaking Jim. But again, Marlon Humphrey, I wonder if Marlon Humphrey thinks he's funny. I wonder if he thinks that John Krasinski's funny.
Probably, yeah. If you dislike him, it's probably how it is. But yeah, for those not listening, we were just doing the Jim look at the camera face.
The classic mockumentary looking at the camera, Jim Halpert face.
I kind of get what you're saying.
Yes, Mike, I do have a man crush on him.
Yeah, my brother chiming in there, throwing some accusations around, but it seems, I don't know. I just didn't know you were so passionate about your John Krasinski takes. I like that.
That's it. That's my 2 cents. John Krasinski, he's a dick. Still like him. That's fine. Moving on. Nico Cantaloupe. Something you want to see more of this year that the Ravens lacked last year. I already mentioned screens. I think that some screens expanding that way, getting, Hollywood Brown averaged 5.6 yards of cushion, meaning how far off the corners were at the line of scrimmage. Player clip.
What do you got for me? I'm now for. I'm going $3. Take your time. We got cigars. We got prosciutto in the bag. Man, prosciutto. You brought the melon, Greg? Yeah, I got the melon. You ready to
What's up, Nico?
Nico Cantaloupe. But yeah, screens, I think more defensively. What did the Ravens not do? I guess just hopefully they're able to use some 4-man rushes and bluff some stuff a little more. But I think mainly just screens, and you want to see Lamar able to maybe change the play at the line of scrimmage more.
What was the question again? I'm sorry.
He wants to know something that you would like to see more of this year from the Ravens that maybe there wasn't enough of last year.
I do think the screens is a good one, and I do appreciate your exercise of charting the ones that they ran, because I do think they had some very creative ones last year, did not run them nearly enough. Something that you were talking about a little bit on Twitter, how there were entire stretches of games early in the season where they didn't run a screen, especially after some of the success that they had with them early on. I would also say maybe some more quick passes to Hollywood Brown and just getting the ball in his hands, because I was watching a little bit of him over the weekend. And it seemed like when he ran routes where he would just go and then make a quick cut, maybe 3 or 5 steps and get the ball in his hand, he would make something happen.
He sits down really well. He runs a quick hitch, just like flying out of the gate. He can stop on a dime.
The first catch against Miami when he ran that in route, basically, and he just caught it and just shook the guy and was just gone. It's just that type of deal. There was a lot of short stuff to him in the Arizona game. I think he had like 8 catches. Really balled out in that game. So just more involvement from Hollywood Brown, health permitting.
Conversely, for the sake of the X-Files, maybe what do we want to see less of? Have to think maybe less Mark Ingram early in the season. Save him for later. You think this is going to be a good team. You understand how he fits. Keep him fresh. Also, maybe less quarterback sweep, less stuff between the tackles from Lamar until later in the season. And that can go kind of both ways, because I went back and watched basically every hit he took. About 40% of the time he runs out of bounds, slides, or just kind of dives under contact. But if you go back to his days at Louisville, he's had over 1,000 career carries and he's 23 years old. So that is going to add up no matter what. I mean, the same way getting hit in the pocket will too. It's all the hits overall. So just reducing those would be awesome, especially again early in the season, and trying to keep expanding on that outside passing game. And then defensively, just less shitty play from linebackers.
Maybe less small ball against offenses that do not facilitate small ball. So like when they were kind of getting a little bit, punched in the mouth by the Browns in that week 16 game, week 16 game, I think it was, in the first half. They definitely started to fix that. But I mean, it really bucked its head in the playoff game when Derrick Henry was just kind of running all over them. And I think part of that was a personnel thing. So now they're going to have some of the horses to play bigger against the offenses that facilitate it. So yeah, maybe just do that when it's appropriate.
It definitely feels like they balanced out in that sense. And that's a really good point. You mentioned, that small ball thing. They had Calais, they had Derek Wolfe, and some of those guys that can kind of do both for sure, because it feels like on offense, they're playing heavy personnel, defense, as much as anyone in the NFL, lighter stuff, lighter packages, dime, nickel, and things like that. So definitely a good point there, Jake. Moving on, Adam Jones 357, who has started his own podcast. I just got to a DM that he sent a while ago.
Really?
That I did not see. Yes, Adam Jones started his own podcast. So we need to we'll try and shout him out and get him involved. Maybe we'll have him on and talk some Ravens, because he's definitely been one of our best favorite listeners by far. But he asked, why do the Baker-led Browns always give the Ravens trouble? And it's a pretty good question. I would think maybe because the Browns freaking sucked for such a long time that they were just kind of the whipping post for the AFC North in many ways. And they're much more competent now overall. I think he is really good at kind of extending plays a little bit and maybe seeing the blitz and kind of throwing accurately underneath. I don't know. I don't really know. I think the Browns have just been feisty with the Ravens lately.
Yeah, Ravens not always great at playing against the mobile quarterbacks, and Baker's not like overly mobile, but he has good, I think, pocket mobility.
He's like athletic, but
yeah,
not
he
mobile.
is. He's not like he's not fast, but he actually shakes guys off a good bit for his like smaller stature. Also, very, very accurate quarterback, which
deep ball thrower, I guess, too. Big.
He is. And the Ravens play a lot of tight man coverage, and they do have the guys to win in those situations a lot of the time. But I think, off the top of my head, it does feel like he made some really tight window throws, and was very accurate against pretty decent man coverage that they would play with guys like Marlon Humphrey. So yeah, he's I think to his credit, he's a pretty good young quarterback. Didn't always showcase it last year, but he has a lot of talent. Ravens have also always kind of played down to the Browns. I feel like there have been stretches where they are more dominant against them, but within the division, I just feel like the Browns kind of have the
a lot
Ravens.
Of close games in that dominant stretch.
Yeah, I wouldn't say they necessarily have their number, but they kind of always are able to keep it tight against them for whatever reason, even going back to like the Whedon days.
I guess just divisional. It's that divisional classic, you play someone at something, even if it's freaking video games. If you're amazing at Call of Duty and you play your friend 1,000 times, he's probably going to end up beating you a bunch.
And there have been tight games. I mean, Baker's first ever, I think, start was a win over the Ravens in Cleveland. And then later that year, it was the Week 17 game where they had a drive to win, and they were probably 30 yards from a field goal to win it.
If you looked at like ESPN does like the game win probability percentages, and there had to be a point late in the fourth quarter where the Browns had like a pretty high chance of winning that game. And then, the Ravens just made a great stand. What I have noticed now I'm thinking about it, they just scheme dudes wide open against the Ravens. And when they beat them like that, just really like gimmicky stuff. The
week 4 game last year when they came into Baltimore and won, you had that Seals Jones touchdown where he was just wide open. It felt like Landry was catching and running all game.
Landry was wide open. They attack the seams really well, and he throws a really heavy like bullet. And
Puts a
if I
lot into
recall,
it.
yeah, he has a lot of zip on the ball. One of the highest velocities of any passer ever at the combine. I think it was like 59 miles an hour, and I think the record's 61. Lamar Jackson was 50 for some perspective. But so that, and then if I recall correctly, the Week 17, the CJ Mosley pick game, Jarvis Landry dropped a wide open, like 30-yard dime, hit him right in the hands, and he was going to run a 75-yard touchdown. That, I mean, the Nick Chubb run, they just get these big, long, explosive, wide open plays. You even think to the little triple option thing or like sweep speed option with Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry. Just a lot of really cool concepts that work really well against the Ravens. So we got pretty in depth on that one. But yeah, Browns schemed some good stuff up against the Ravens and give them a tough time. Moving on, Icy Hot Podcast asked us, does Greg Roman have a problem beating a Dean Pease defense?
So I guess that goes back to Super Bowl 47, pretty much.
Right.
The answer, I guess, is maybe. I feel like Dean Pease defenses are known for being somewhat sound and, staying your gaps to maintain responsibilities. And Greg Roman does like to scheme guys wide open, which maybe that doesn't happen as much against, a defense like the one that Dean Pease runs. You're probably a little more suited to answering this one than I am, because I just don't really know a whole lot about the whole like Dean Pease intricacies.
He shuts the run game down first and foremost. Very disciplined. He feels like his defense is very disciplined against the run. I mean, Ravens for years disciplined against the run. He likes to stack the box a lot. And what does Greg Roman like to do? Heavy personnel, run the football. So it's kind of strength on strength.
When he was the coordinator here, the term bend, don't break was used approximately 8,000 times. And I absolutely despised it, especially as we got near the end of the Pease era where it just was not working.
Yeah, and the thing is, it always bit them in the ass, especially the last couple of years of Dean Pease, like late in the year. And it was kind of the same thing where you look at the Ravens going for it on fourth down this whole year and then bites them in the ass against Dean Pease. But yeah, Dean Pease
it works well when you have a competent offense, but they just didn't.
Right. And it was, it was what it was. We talked about that 1,000 times, but the red zone defense of Dean Pease is also insanely fucking good. And that's why bend but don't break was so popular. You look at the Ravens red zone effectiveness as far as keeping teams from scoring touchdowns once they were down there. Dean Pease is awesome at it. Very, very, very stout defense in the red zone. Greg Roman's not an explosive play offensive coordinator. He likes the steady, consistent, move the chains, bust it up your butt and punch it into the goal line. And Dean Pease just doesn't build his defenses that way. If you want to beat Dean Pease, you got to be able to throw over top of him and things like that. And that's not the way that Greg Roman constructs. So again, it's just kind of strength on strength and just disciplined. And that's why the Titans were able to whip the Ravens' asses, because you have to understand when the Ravens put people in motion. Greg Roman likes to use a lot of motion, how that changes the play, where you need to move, how that changes gap assignments for individual defenders, how you need to slide from the B gap to the C gap. If, Willie Snead comes in motion from the weak side to the strong side, everybody's got to move down, understand where the weakness is, understand how to play contain on the backside, all that stuff. So that could feed into it, but Marty Mornweg did whip Dean Pease' ass. We will say that in that route of the Titans. That was a little bit more of the defense, I guess. I guess that was a little bit more wink whipping. I don't even know.
They had an opening drive touchdown, I think, to Crabtree. Crabtree, I think, had 2 touchdowns on that game.
Yeah, I think it was. What was it at half? I think it was 14-0 at half, maybe.
It was a close game, and then they started to pull away in the third. Lamar had a long run, I remember. Get
out of the goal line. Yeah,
that
so
was
credit.
That was the day we put our dog down.
Oh,
so, tough memories.
Wow,
that game made me feel better, so I thank the team for it.
Good, there you go, Ravens. Moving on back to the old mailbag, which escaped me for a moment. Dean Pease is retired now, though, so we can hang our hats on that.
I don't know.
Is he really? Well, I'm pretty sure his son is like high up coach there, so fuck. Moving on, do you think that Tyree Phillips' feet are slower than Orlando Brown's were coming out of college? Yes. So Orlando Brown's feet were pretty efficient despite how big he was, and that's why I was kind of confident.
His feet and his technique kind of weren't really the issue. It was more just the combine stuff.
And his like body shape and stuff.
So he's probably a little quicker, yeah. What do you think Dean Pease' son's name is? Because the name Dean Pease, it just kind of flows very well, and you feel like it's a name where you'd get made fun of a lot, but it flows well enough maybe where you don't. What do you?
Do you have it in front of you?
No, I'm asking.
Look it up while I'm ruminating. Try to look it up if you can, because I'm going to think on it for like 3 seconds. It has to sound like someone's taking a pee, obviously, and it has to be quick.
What I'm saying, like Dean's name is a verb.
I'll be disappointed if it's longer than 5 letters. I'm going to go with Steve Pease.
Any other guesses? That's not right.
Jack Pease.
It's Matt Pease.
4 letters. Boom. Okay. Yep. Matt Pease. Quick. It has to be boom, boom, syllable, syllable. Moving on. Ravens for life, baby. Do you think the Ravens will lead the league in turnovers? I guess turnover differential. No. Do you think the Ravens defense will lead the league in turnovers forced with their dynamic defense? I think they'll have a big improvement on the turnovers they forced from last year. We mentioned Marcus Peters.
More last year, yeah. I thought they were going to be way more turnover dependent than they wound up being, at least at first.
Right. And I think, it is a lot of it's going to depend on the health of the defense and the health of that secondary again. Because if, let's say, Peters and Jimmy Smith can't go, then all of a sudden we end up seeing, the game that comes to mind is Auden Tate's weird performance against the Ravens. What was that, week 6, maybe? Week 7? When did they beat the Bengals? I don't remember. But Auden Tate was able to just time and time again. Yeah, the kick return game.
Yeah,
and that was like Maurice Kennedy and Anthony Avery.
It was like week 5 or 6, I think.
I can't remember. It feels weird, but they didn't have Marcus Peters, I feel like, in that game.
I think it was week 6. Peters was not there yet.
And then they played Seattle and had Peters. That's what it was. I was thinking the Seattle game was week 6. There is a house phone ringing in here.
Why do you have a house phone? He's going to get the house phone. Who do you suppose calls a house phone in 2020? Is it just all spammers?
Telemarketer. It has to be all spammers. Then they punch in digits and stuff. It was a spam.
Sick.
Yeah, it's pretty tight. Just have it there just to stun, I guess.
Yeah, that is a stunt. You should keep it there another like 5 years or so, and these Gen Zers are just gonna be like, "What is that? Like, is that a remote?"
Oh my god, that makes me think of the commercial where the girl's like laying in the grass, and the guy's like, "Oh, is that a laptop?" And she goes, "What's a laptop?" And she has like a tablet or something.
That commercial made people enraged.
That's a bad one. That is definitely something that should have been pulled early on. Just it had a weird response.
I thought it was funny. If it made people mad, I'm happy. So I liked it.
That's true. But yeah, so if there is a weak link in the secondary somewhere, again through injury, they're just going to exploit it. That being the Ravens' opponents. So if that situation doesn't occur, and if we get a healthy season out of Clark and Thomas and Humphrey and Peters and Smith to some extent, them playing 80+% of the total snaps that they should. Yes, a lot of turnovers. If not, maybe not. And I know that the teams know the Ravens are going to blitz them, so their entire week is getting the ball out quick, understanding where the blitz is coming from, trying to pick up on some of those things. So a lot of chess that goes on into a Ravens football game that would not happen at the Pee Wee level. So very, very different. Moving on, B Rose 931. Does Justice Hill offer anything different from J.K. Dobbins? What do you think?
Probably, that's actually a good question. Probably a little bit more just as a pure receiver, but I think Dobbins is a pretty nice receiver in his own right. But yeah, I think they're actually kind of similar players now that I think about it. Dobbins probably is going to give you more out of the I formation as much as you choose to run it. I'm not sure how much that is going to be ran as opposed to just like strong or whatever, where they put Ricard like under the guard. But yeah, that's actually a really good question. I think Dobbins might honestly just be a souped up version.
Yeah, it feels like just they just fit a different size profile. Dobbins is a little shorter, stockier, bowling ball-esque in a way.
He's just more like a running back. Like Hill is a little taller, right?
A little thinner, a little leaner. Yeah. I think that if, let's say you run just like some sort of outside run concept, let's call it a toss or a sweep, and you give Dobbins the ball, you give Hill the ball, and kind of have them mirror each other, I think that Hill will pull away. I think Hill might have a little bit more straight line speed. Other than that, not a ton. Just kind of fits a different size profile, and I think that Hill maybe can. I think they both probably would prefer to run in a zone scheme. So pretty similar overall for the most part. Just a couple minor differences. And Bureau's 931 also asked, do any of the Ravens edge rushers hit double-digit sacks with the additions of Calais Campbell and Derek Wolfe? If Matthew Judon plays this year, which I feel like the Ravens really want him to play on the franchise tag. I don't think he's going anywhere. I would be pretty shocked to see him not hit 10 sacks. PFF put him down as 10 sacks last year because for some reason
honestly, I think he's the only answer. Because I don't think the D linemen are going to do it. There's not really a alpha dog at linebacker on the opposite side, rushing the quarterback. So I think
the thing is, Bowser might, McPhee, they're probably not going to use him enough that he gets that many sacks. They're probably going to want to keep him healthy, seeing as they didn't, keep him fresh, and he immediately wore down and got hurt through, I guess, in the Seattle game, so like week 7. And then Bowser is probably the second best outside pass rusher, but he plays behind Judon. Like him and Judon's best position are both at that Sam position where you drop into coverage a lot more and kind of have some more freedom and stuff. And Bowser's not going to get to play that because of Judon. So I would say probably only Judon. I agree with you, Jake.
There's a lot of bodies there, and they'll all get some sacks.
Yeah, I think, Campbell, we could see 7, 8, 9, 10 sack season for sure. Maybe even a little better than that. He kind of had a down year last year, but being in a more complicated scheme that might get some better one-on-ones and stuff for him. And yeah, I think those are probably the only two guys I would point to would be Campbell and Judon. So we'll see. I think they end up with a lot more sacks this year, though, as a whole, because like you said, so many bodies. Jihad Ward, maybe we see 6 sacks out of him. Maybe we see some out of, Malik Harrison and Queen. They could combine for maybe 10 sacks, stuff like that. So we'll see. Chuck Clark maybe gets a couple sacks, some DB blitzes and things like that. Would love Tavon Young to be able to come back and get those sneaky little blitzes he's so damn good at off the edge. That would be great. I would love to see Jimmy Smith able to blitz. I feel like he
suplexed Jared Goff last year.
Yes, I would love to see. I've always wanted Jimmy Smith to be able to blitz more, but he was just the only really good corner for a while, so they couldn't do that much. Moving on, ZJ Batman asks, how long until Patrick Queen signs his deal? Let's give a date prediction on that.
How long can I slide? Separate my...
How long?
Yeah, I have no idea.
Date prediction. Let's put the over under. Let's put the over under first on July 1st. Do you think he signs? Do you think he signs in June or no?
I want to say July 8th. He's going to sign
right before my birthday. That'd be tough.
Wait, what's your birthday?
10th.
Okay, my sister is the 9th.
Hell yeah.
Look at that.
I'm gonna say camp is supposed
everything, like every date analysis is like in the context of your birthday this episode.
This is my birthday episode, and it's not even my birthday. I'm gonna say July. No, I'm gonna go June. I'll go June. I'll go on the under. Let's say June 26th. That's a Friday, and that's when stuff goes down usually. I'm gonna say June 26th. It is announced Patrick Queen has signed his rookie deal.
I should have looked into the day of the week.
I mean, we have a lot riding on this, so.
Yeah, I want to say July 10th. That's a Friday. No other news going on that day.
Boom. Okay. The great Josh B. It is a Friday. The great Josh B asks. No other news going on that day. The great Josh B asks, can Prochet crack the rotation?
That clicked so quickly for you.
Can he? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, go have a freaking good camp.
Can Prochet do what? I'm sorry.
Crack the rotation. Can James Prochet basically get into the mix at wide receiver?
Yeah, I think he could. He's not really dealing with a murderer's row of like guys in front of him, honestly. Like as much as
Did you lose me?
I've got you. You got me. You're a little laggy on the screen. You hear me?
I think I lagged for a second. Yep, I can hear you. Are we good now?
Yeah. You were lagging a little bit. Am I good?
Yep, cool. Okay. What do you think? James
Yeah,
Prochet.
I think he can crack the rotation. Definitely. I don't think he's dealing with like a murderer's row of guys in front of him. Like I like Chris Moore a lot as a special teams guy. Jaleel Scott has shown promise at times throughout the preseason, but these are guys that are not exactly like blowing you away as like wide receivers, even in like the context of like a 4 or a 5. So I think with some of the competitiveness and the innate stuff that you see on the way Prochet attacks the ball, I think he has a chance.
I think he definitely has a strong shot, and him being a rookie gives him a huge advantage over Jaleel Scott, who if he doesn't have a strong camp, you have to think he's out. Moving on, ZJ we already said that. Nico Cantalupo asked another one. Can you see J.K. Dobbins emerging as a starter before the season ends? Starter makes me think that he's the one getting the most touches like every week, if that's how you want to define starter, because they're clearly going to use a rotation. And I'm going to say no. I'm going to think there's going to be games where Ingram takes more, he takes more, and maybe a game or two where it's either Hill or Edwards that kind of sneaks away and steals some touches. But I think he'll get like a good 35 or 40% of the running back carries overall.
Yeah, I think injuries notwithstanding, I think it's going to be a back by committee type deal for pretty much the entire year.
Yeah, if Mark Ingram is no-go for some period of time, let's say he misses November, I think you see J.K. Dobbins in the 15-plus touch range at that point.
Because there have been times when maybe they go into a year and they expect a guy to be the guy, but there's an injury or like a Ray Rice situation, and then they're just gone suddenly, and then all of a sudden like a Lorenzo Taliaferro is like your lead back for like 4 weeks, which was sick. Never to be heard from again, unfortunately. So yeah, there are definitely extenuating circumstances that could happen, and that would be the case that I could see this situation for Dobbins where he becomes the starter. But I think back by committee for the most part this year.
And the final question, RZ17 asks, will the Ravens make another addition in June, big or small? Yes, I think one more addition in June. Some veteran, some random veteran signing. Yeah,
I agree. Just somebody like, I don't want to say no name, but just like a journeyman.
Like another Jake Ryan type thing.
Sure. Yeah, I forget about Jake Ryan.
Exactly. So something like that we can definitely see. But that rounds out the mailbag. Appreciate you guys. That was a good one. Hope you guys like our interview with Connor Rogers. He makes a lot of good points and is our number one guest at this point with 3 appearances on this show.
I think 4 now, because we had
4 appearances.
One with him, me, and Voss before you joined. Actually, the month or the 2 months before that we were doing it, which was pretty great. I mean, the quality was so bad. It was I don't know. It was nice. It was our first interview. It was cool. And then I think he came on twice during the season, and then once before the combine this year.
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
Or maybe once during the season and once before the combine.
I think that, pre-draft, and then now we have post-draft. We have in-season and before season last year. So 4 times. So I think that makes him our number one guest by probably 2.
Cecil's been on a good amount. We got to get him back on here at some point. But it's those 2 for sure. I think Connor's number 1. So he's always great to have on. He's got a lot to say. He is very articulate and very good at getting his points across, and just one of the absolute nicest guys that you could deal with in this industry. Very non-pretentious, about the fact that he's a young guy just absolutely crushing it in the draft media industry, which is not easy to do. So it's a very fun listen. Hope you guys stick around for that. It's about 45 minutes in total, I think. And it's just a great chat with him.
Yep, puts us around 90 minutes. So I hope you guys enjoy. We will try and get some more guests coming up on. We're going to hit, a point where I guess hopefully we're getting some news out of the NFL regarding actual dates of things, probably in the next 2 weeks, I would think, where training camps might get announced and things like that. So looking forward to that, but we'll be pumping out some episodes. We're probably definitely going to do at least, I would think, 2, maybe 3 more rewatchables before training camp starts. We have fun doing those. We hope you guys enjoy those. I know that people have wanted us to do a New England game. I've gotten a couple requests on that, so maybe we'll hit one of those, and then some other fun ones from some period of time. Maybe like I think a fun one would be like that weird Texans playoff game where Arian Foster destroyed them and JJ Watt destroyed them, but they somehow won.
Is that the Jacoby game?
Yes.
That was sick. Yeah, I think that was when I first found out about Jacoby Jones. He was helping the Ravens in that game, and then he helped them out the next year.
Exactly. So that would be a fun one. Maybe New England one. Something else. Give us, add us, whatever, message us, let us know which ones you want us to do. We'll definitely get a New England one, maybe a couple more. And that about sums it up for today.
Yeah, definitely. So this was a fun one. We're going to see about recording later in the week. I am going to the beach on Friday. So doing a little beach weekend for the kid. Going to get a little golf in and try to be responsible. So hoping for a fun weekend in that respect. If we do not get another episode out, I think Walton West over on Flock Talk should have one out. If you have not checked those guys out, please do, because they're hilarious. Very good show that they're putting out over there. Well, I guess on the same feed, so I don't have to say over anywhere. Yeah, check those guys out. And if we do not talk to you then, we will talk to you early next week. Been trying to reach out to some potential guests, put some feelers out. Don't have anything concrete yet, but we will continue to do so as we move forward into the summer.
Absolutely. Doing our best here. So we will be back into the swing of things when training camp starts. If not, we'll be bringing you some more content as usual. Hang out with us on Twitter. Join these bad boys on YouTube. We will eventually maybe get a system down where we do the podcast on set days of the week or something. Probably during the season. I mean,
I was going to say, we definitely have that during the season. It's a little bit different with the off season, but yeah, I think definitely just nailing down some dates. Things have been a little bit in flux. You've been living down in DC for the most part. So we were talking earlier today, you might be coming back up to the Hampstead area so we can maybe do some more in-person recording, which we both love the quality of that a lot better than we do of the Skype and StreamYard situation, even though StreamYard has been working very well.
Secret silver lining for us is that like the podcasts that I listen to personally have been so shitty quality throughout this entire time. Everyone's using, Zoom, or we're using StreamYard and different things that I'm now kind of like immune to listening to subpar quality, but our quality will jump back up when the situation is over. And we've also learned a lot in this past year. I mean, we're creeping up on, I can't remember the exact one. We'll dig it up, but when Jake and I officially kind of took over and signed our contracts and everything, we're creeping up on that date. So we consider ourselves to be a lot more settled in as we're kind of on the fly getting ready for the season last year. And we appreciated you guys so much.
July. So yeah, we're getting there.
I think it was like maybe like July 17th or 20th or something of the sort.
Yeah,
somewhere in that range. But yeah, for sure. So we appreciate you guys. We will talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for listening and peace out.
See ya.